All right, we're back. Finished teaching my class over in College of Marin. I'm in North Beach right now. Just had the delicious Sam's double cheeseburger. Anthony Bourdain once called it the top 3 burger in the world right here on Broadway. Have a little bit of a drive in front of me. And Mike tells me that there's a lot of talk about Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk possibly being together on the same NFL team for the last time this year. So a last dance kind of thing. So the question is, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk, is this the last dance? Will the 49ers not be able to or not be willing to retain both of these receivers beyond the 2023 season? It's an interesting question. It's a decent question. I think that there are really simplistic pieces of analysis that are being conducted around it, such as the pieces of analysis surrounding Deebo Samuel's contractual situation that I think is important to understand. I don't think that Deebo is likely to go anywhere anytime soon because the 49ers are so tied to him contractually. But we do need to understand Brandon Aiyuk's situation as well, because he's only under contract for 2 more seasons, final year of his rookie deal, and then of course the 5th-year option season, which was just exercised at $14.2 million. So we need to understand the wide receiver market. We need to understand a salary cap, and then we can make our best guess as to what the 49ers will do as far as keeping both of these receivers. Now, first thing I have to say is that Brandon Aiyuk is entering a big-time trial year for the 49ers. Again, they just exercised the 5th-year option. He has done enough over his first 3 seasons to warrant that. That's easy. The top-paid receiver in the league is Tyreek Hill, $30 million per year. So Brandon Aiyuk is going to be making just a couple million this year, not much at all. But that 2024 season, he's in line to make $14.2 million on the 5th-year option. Complete no-brainer. If you've got over a dozen guys making more than $14 million, I think it's clear that Brandon Aiyuk is definitely better than the top 15 receivers in the league as far as man coverage, creating separation, beating the stickiest cornerback on the other team. Brandon Aiyuk has just gotten better and better and better there. He might not be a $30 million player quite yet. Maybe he surges this next season and becomes that, but he's definitely better than a $14 million player. So if you're the 49ers, picking up his 5th-year option made a whole lot of sense. I've just turned on the Embarcadero, by the way. You should see the ferry building and scaffolding in a little bit, maybe some Bay Bridge. But Brandon Aiyuk, I mean, that's where he stands contractually. Deebo Samuel, meanwhile, he's already signed his extension. He's already making big money. So when people talk about Deebo Samuel potentially leaving the 49ers after this season due to trade, or there's that ridiculous rumor this offseason, this right here, there's no real benefit financially for the 49ers in trading Deebo before 2025. They've given him such a big signing bonus. They've also had an embedded restructure already in his deal that essentially converted base salary into signing bonus. They added void years. If Deebo Samuel has been paid a whole lot more money at this point than has hit the 49ers cap. And what that means is if they trade or cut him, the money that they paid him that hasn't yet hit the cap would hit as dead money. So even if they got rid of Deebo Samuel in 2024 after this next season, they'd be $26.5 million in dead money. The 49ers would only save $2 million. So it wouldn't really be worth their while to get rid of Deebo Samuel unless they got a massive trade return. And the only way they would get a massive trade return is if Deebo Samuel put up a massive season this next year. And if Deebo Samuel put up a massive 2023 season on the football field, well, then they wouldn't want to trade him, right? That's what these contracts are about. They tie you to a player. And I don't want to say for better or for worse, but if the player is playing better, if it's in that better category, you're not going to want to get rid of him. So the whole idea that the 49ers are somehow going to part ways with Deebo Samuel, that component of this last dance theory, that's ridiculous. But it's the Brandon Aiyuk side that's a little bit more interesting to me, because the 49ers are going to have to pay him to keep him at some point. The question is, how much are they going to have to pay him? Again, he's making rookie deal money this season. He's set to earn that pay raise, the $14.2 million next season. Nick Bosa's in the same boat as Brandon Aiyuk as far as he's going to be on a fifth-year option contract this year, but he's probably not going to play on that. I mean, we almost certainly can say that Nick Bosa will not play on his fifth-year option contract for the 49ers. They're going to renegotiate a deal before then. So say that Brandon Aiyuk delivers another really good season for the 49ers. We're talking another 1,000-plus yard receiving season, but even more important than that, say that the tape is really good for Brandon Aiyuk, okay? Say that he shows up and he's beating guys in man coverage. He struggled against Denver last year. I think it was week 3. Pat Surtain, the second from the Broncos, was blanketing him. That seemed to be the one cornerback that really was able to shadow Brandon Aiyuk really effectively. Say that nobody's able to do that this year. Say that he's taken another stride in his game. 49ers have another good year. And Brandon Aiyuk is a top receiver commodity heading into his fifth-year contract year. The answer to this question on the screen, will he command north of $23 million? Probably would be yes. And the reason I put $23 million on there is that's what Deebo Samuel's average per year is for the 49ers. Might be a little bit north of $23 million, but it's about that. Top receiver, again, Tyreek Hill is 30. If Aiyuk puts together a good year, considering inflation, all the receiver metrics that you look at for contracts, would he be somewhere between 25 and 30? It's a fair question. That's what I'm posing there. Because if he is, then that's when the 49ers would be in a budgetary, I don't want to say a crunch, but they would have that budgetary decision to make. So maybe the better question is, will Brandon Aiyuk earn 49ers A-list status? And by this, I mean this season, will he stack 2023 on top of 2022 as an A wide receiver, a 1,000-yard guy that the 49ers consider indispensable to their offense? Because if the answer to that question is yes, I think the 49ers will be willing to pay him. The only A-lister that the 49ers have not yet paid under this Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch regime has been DeForest Buckner. But DeForest Buckner was not a homegrown talent. DeForest Buckner was inherited from the prior regime. The 49ers made a trade. They obviously brought in a first-round pick, and then they selected Javon Kinlaw to try to replace DeForest Buckner. They saved some money. It was a complicated financial situation that the 49ers, might regret. Well, they might regret the Javon Kinlaw pick because he hasn't produced at the level that they thought he would have produced at yet. But still, with DeForest Buckner, it was a tangled web there, right? It was a tangled web. You could see what they were trying to do. Did they reach their fully desired result? No, because Javon Kinlaw hasn't been able to replicate the DeForest Buckner production. But you fast forward this to Brandon Aiyuk and you look at the differences between the two situations. Brandon Aiyuk was a homegrown talent. There is more connection between the 49ers brass and Brandon Aiyuk and the legacy of drafting him than there was between the 49ers brass and DeForest Buckner since he was picked in 2016 under the former regime, right? So this brass, the one that we're talking about right now, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, they operate with the idea that they are going to retain A-list players. The salary cap grows every single season, except for that COVID financial effect year. If the salary cap continues growing, the 49ers will continue to have room to accommodate a growing A-list core. Look at this year. They added Christian McCaffrey to the mix. He's an A-lister. They're able to pay him. They're able to make enough money with the growing salary cap to fit these A-listers. Nick Bosa is going to be another great example when Nick Bosa signs his upcoming mega deal. They're able to fit the A-listers because they're extremely financially efficient at the B and C list levels. Guys like Charles Omenihu, right, priced himself out of the 49ers range. Azeez Al-Shire priced himself out of the 49ers range. Jimmy Ward priced himself out of the 49ers range. Those were not A-list players. So the fact that the 49ers didn't pony up to overpay them like other teams, like the Chiefs paid Omenihu $10 million a year, the Texans paid Jimmy Ward, $5 to $6 million a year. The fact that the 49ers saved on those players and instead replaced them with cheaper options like Isaiah Oliver for Jimmy Ward. We'll see what they do at the edge rushing positions. Obviously, they paid Javon Hargrave. They added to their A-list core with that. But at the edge rushing position opposite Bosa, they're trying to get cheaper, either rookie deal or economical veteran deal contract money. The money that they save at the margins of the B and C list players allows the 49ers to pay the A-listers. So it's up to Brandon Aiyuk this next year to prove to the 49ers that he is an A-lister. If he is, they will put him in that bucket of, we're going to pay you. If he's not, and he's an A-, a B+ list player, that's when you start skating on thin ice, and that's when the 49ers will say, okay, maybe a trade makes more sense in this situation because they don't consider you worthy of that A-list core salary, which they have to be really stingy with because that A-list core keeps on getting bigger and bigger. So if we're going to, talk about the question of Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel, is this going to be the last time they're together? I have to tell you this. I have to tell you that Deebo Samuel is not likely going anywhere anytime soon just because there is no financial incentive for the 49ers to let go of him. And if he's playing well, then any trade package that somebody wants to send the 49ers, they're not going to be inclined to take it. But Brandon Aiyuk, there's a bigger question just because he isn't under that kind of contract with the 49ers, and they're still deciding if he's an A-lister. So obviously they have to decide that both of these guys are A-listers to retain both. I think that's clear. Deebo Samuel, they've already decided, they've already paid him like the A-lister that he is, and of course they hope that he continues living up to that contract because they have so much invested in him, and the dead money hit would be really, really hard to avoid. But Brandon Aiyuk, he's got one dominant season under his belt, and he has a chance to add more now. We speak as I pass Oracle Park, home of the San Francisco Giants. It's a good shot, right? You can see it there through the window. This was a drive down to Embarcadero in San Francisco, which is obviously a really, really pretty waterfront for a nice and vibrant city. You'll see the Oracle Park sign here in a little bit. There's actually like a dump truck right now on my left, park here at the red light. So I'm going to stop a few feet earlier so you don't have to see the dump truck. Any questions? We have any good ones? Mike, why don't you toss some questions on if Mike is at home? I don't even know if Mike's at home. If Mike's not at home, then maybe I can toss some questions on myself, but I will only do so at red lights. And there aren't going to be too many more red lights. James asks, if the 49ers win the Super Bowl, then what will happen? Well, it's all going to depend on if they win the Super Bowl with a huge contribution from Brandon Aiyuk or, Deebo Samuel less so because they have so much money tied up into him. But, I mean, if they win the Super Bowl, they're going to want to run it back. They're going to want to run it back with the major contributors. So say Aiyuk gets hurt this year and isn't a major contributor, well, that changes a lot of dynamics. If they win the Super Bowl with 200 Brandon Aiyuk receiving yards, well, yeah, they're going to open up the checkbook and pay him. Mike is at the grocery store, so we're going to let Mike be. Tell Mike what to buy at the grocery store, though. Show Mike some love. Mike does such a great job. Such a great job. We're about to leave the city, headed south. Please do post your questions, though. It's getting dark anyway, so we're going to wrap it up here in a second. Greg Smith asks, what do I think the 49ers are going to do about their fourth quarterback? Well, they signed their fourth quarterback. Did you miss it? Brandon Allen, the veteran. He helped develop Joe Burrow with the Cincinnati Bengals as a backup over there. So Brandon Allen's going to be the fourth quarterback. So I read somewhere, was it Matt Mayoko that said that he had $200,000 guaranteed? That's not a big guarantee, but it's one that suggests that the 49ers want to keep him around on the practice squad because it would offset with a practice squad salary, which is somewhere between, I think for Nate Sudfeld, when he was on the practice squad for the full year, it was $252,000. So I think that the guarantee might be a little bit bigger. And I think that the salary for the practice squad nowadays might be a little bit higher than it was back then. But I think it's clear the 49ers are looking at a quarterback room of Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and Sam Darnold with a fourth guy on the practice squad, and that's Brandon Allen. Now, at the rookie minicamp, we're going to get to see Steven Montez out of Colorado, right? And then the Northwestern quarterback, I just forgot his name. Clayton Thorson. Clayton Thorson's going to be the other QB at the rookie minicamp. Those are just tryout quarterbacks, though. They'll be wearing the 49ers jersey and the helmet, but they'll only be trying out. And Brandon Allen is already on board with $200,000 guaranteed. Who do I think is going to be running back 2 behind Christian McCaffrey? Well, Elijah Mitchell is the most talented out of those guys and most established. Elijah Mitchell's a really good runner. He's got to stay healthy. So I think the answer is as simple as that. Elijah Mitchell, if he stays healthy, if not, anybody's game. I'm really curious to see if Jordan Mason takes the next step this year. Jordan Mason is a player who ran really hard last year. Probably has to work on his pass protection a little bit. Work on some of the pass catching out of the backfield to make sure that he's a legitimate, third down dual threat option. But as far as, grinding out big gains in the face of contact and running like a bull in the china shop, Jordan Mason will give that to you. Got a nice little congratulations here. Thank you. It was crazy this weekend. It was like one of the biggest games of my life, the wedding. So we didn't, just to tell you guys a little bit about it, the one thing that I insisted on as far as the wedding, because I didn't insist on much because I'm a man, I don't really care about all that, all the details, is I didn't want to have a first look. I don't believe in the first look. I don't think you should see your bride until she comes down the aisle. So we went through like great lengths to make sure that I didn't see Margot until she came down the aisle, and everything worked. That they, like, when I showed up at the church, they made sure they hid her in a room, and then I along with my groomsmen, we went into a different room, and then we had to be basically closed in there, and then it all worked out. It all worked out really well. So thank you. I appreciate the love. Now I have another Last Dance question here. Last Dance, possibly for a bit of the team. Kittle, Juszczyk. I mean, both of those guys are under contract moving forward. I get it, I guess, with some... Kittle's had a restructure, though. I don't think you could save that much money by moving on from him. Listen, if George Kittle delivers at the level that he delivered at last season, the 49ers aren't moving on from him. He caught 11 touchdowns. That was the career high from George Kittle. I mean, he's the best tight end in football. Travis Kelce might be the guy that puts up the biggest numbers, but George Kittle's out there blocking. He's so important to what the 49ers are doing offensively. This whole idea that the 49ers are going to move on from George Kittle just because a few loudmouth fans and social media content creators don't like him for some reason is completely foolish. It's not based in fact. So I'm not criticizing you, Donald. I'm just saying that the whole notion that George Kittle is not going to be on this football team if he continues playing the way that he's playing is not rooted in reality. One thing about George Kittle is that he was pretty damn beat up after the 2021 season. That was the season that ended in LA at the NFC Championship game. He wasn't even able to start lifting again until far, far into the off season of 2022. Like around tight end U, which was in June, that was when George Kittle had restarted lifting, maybe a little bit before that. He actually entered this past offseason healthy. That's a big deal. So think about that. George Kittle was healthy last year, but it took him a while to get going on his offseason workouts, and he delivered a good year. I think logic tells us that he's going to I think it's logic tells us that George Kittle's going to be in a situation where he could put together a good year this season. I think that the health entering the off season is everything for these guys. You ask about Kyle Juszczyk, similar deal in that he's continuing to play extremely productive football for the 49ers. Health-wise, he's had an even cleaner track record here than almost every other player on the roster. Why would you not want him back? There's a reason why the 49ers, inked multi-year deals with both Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle, and it's because they believe that these guys can play through these contracts. Now, you give yourself outs as a football team, and because it is football, guys get hurt, stuff changes. But until you need to actually use the out, there is no reason to actually use it. Somebody called me, which is why that camera disappeared there for a second. Let's see some more questions here. I can't really see all too many down on the screen. I may call the show here in a few minutes just because it's getting a little dark outside. We're probably going to lose a little bit of lighting. Exactly. Kittle has been one of the best players in football. He's been extremely supportive of his teammates. There's absolutely nothing to dislike about the guy. He's making, I think, technically he's making at market rate for how good of a tight end he is, but for how much he produces, it's below market rate, $15 million a year. Because George Kittle is just as valuable as somebody like Tyreek Hill over in Miami, who's making twice as much money at $30 million a year. With the 49ers, you're getting a market efficiency with George Kittle. And, I guess there was some complaints that he didn't like Trey Lance or something, which ended up being completely wrong. I mean, he got him a birthday cake today. Some of this stuff is just absurd. I think that 49ers fans might be better off just not looking at Twitter over the course of the offseason, or even during the course of the season. They might have a less warped view of the football team. Who do I see sliding in front of Drake Jackson at the defensive end position? Well, Cleveland Farrell. I mean, they signed Cleveland Farrell, I think, to be a base down starter. Drake Jackson, though, I mean, Drake Jackson has to have a fire lit up under his ass this year. He is entering a really, really important year. This is an opportunity for Drake Jackson, who opened the season looking really good for a rookie last year. Did not look nearly as good closing the season, right? Ran out of gas. Wasn't quite strong enough to play the run the way the 49ers wanted to at the NFL level. Well, Drake Jackson has got to turn things around this year down the stretch, and he's been spending a lot of time at the team facility working on his strength. That's the key for him. Continue getting stronger, be able to turn into a true four-quarter, three-down player. If that happens, nobody leapfrogs him. But I think they brought in a guy like Cleveland Farrell to take the load off of Drake Jackson. Farrell's not the best pass rusher, but he's good against the run. Can kind of complement what Drake Jackson does, right? You think Drake is more of a situational pass rusher, still early, still young in his career. Well, Cleveland Farrell is definitely not a situational pass rusher. He's more of a base defensive end. You got both of those guys to pair opposite Nick Bosa. And then, of course, you have this guy, Robert Beal, out of Georgia. Do I think he could start? No, I don't think he could start because I don't think Robert Beal is going to play the run really well. He's 247 pounds. Your starter is normally going to be a base down guy. It's a little bit bigger, hence Cleveland Farrell. But I think that, you rotate defensive linemen in. They could be package guys when they come in. So you could just let him pin his ears back, get after the passer. The 49ers, their R&D department said that Robert Beal is one of the fastest players in college football coming out of his stance in obvious passing situations last year. So there you have it. Let him work in obvious passing situations. So Robert Beal is going to be another player that the 49ers rotate in package situations that could take away some playing time from, a Drake Jackson. That could take away some playing time from a Cleveland Farrell. That's the point. You want to be as deep as possible at this pass rushing position. No, they're not going to move Beal to outside linebacker. This is a 4-3 defense. The one thing that got Georgia in trouble with Beal, who was a 5-star recruit, they had a lot of talent there, so they started getting a little funky with it. But they put Beal in a linebacker type of role. There were a lot of drops in the coverage, and he wasn't particularly good at that. He is best putting his hand in the dirt or just lining up in a track stance and getting after the quarterback. And that's what you do in the 4-3. This is not a 3-4 for the 49ers. You get in the 4-3, you run the wide 9. The defensive ends are elongated, right? They're stretched out so they can have a better angle to run around the tackle. The 49ers believe that Robert Beal is going to be one of the best athletes in football to do that, 4.47 40. So they're not going to move him to that linebacker position. This scheme is built for athletic, light defensive ends, and that's where Robert Beal is going to play. Well, let's see some more questions. Got a lot of congratulations on the wedding. I appreciate that. All right, this will be the last one. Getting a pass rusher like Floyd or Aiyuk and Deebo would be an all-in move. You know, there's no reason to rush a move like this. First, before the 49ers decided to add anybody, and they added Marlon Davidson, the defensive tackle, the other day. But before they just add anybody, they waited till the compensatory formula rule was out the window. After the NFL draft, guys no longer signings no longer count against the comp formula. So with somebody like Yannick or Leonard Floyd, you wait for that if they're still going to be on the market, and for some reason they still are. So now if you're the 49ers, you can also wait out the market. You can also drop a line in with their agents and say, hey, if they get offered by somebody, let us know before they sign, and maybe we match that offer. Maybe we could sweeten the pot. Maybe they'd rather play with a contender. After the first couple waves of free agency ends, there really is no rush. It's like a dead period between now and training camp when you finally want to start getting guys into the building. So I feel that's where we're at right now. 49ers are going to get a gauge on who they have, their rookies, once they're actually in the building, and that's going to start on May 11th here on Thursday. Once you have the gauge set, that's when you move forward. That's when you get to a position where you could say, okay, hey, yeah, we think that we do need Yannick and Deebo to fill out this squad. We think that would be worth the investment. We think that Jadeveon Clowney would look nice in our uniform. We'll go for that. A lot of times the 49ers have said no to this kind of stuff. Sometimes they've said yes. They have obviously paid big for star players, Christian McCaffrey being the most recent example. But you might as well keep your options open as long as possible. All right, guys, I'm almost where I need to be. So I will talk to everybody really soon. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time. Bye now.